Let me tell you something most folks won't say out loud. You don't need friends after 70. I know, it sounds harsh, maybe even a little lonely, but I'm not here to sugarcoat life. I've been around long enough to know what matters and what doesn't. When you reach 70, 80, or even 90, life starts to whisper truths that nobody told you when you were young. And one of those truths is this: you don't need friends the way you used to. That doesn't mean you hate people or that you should become a bitter old hermit. It means you start to realize that peace, independence, and self-respect matter more than social circles or dinner invites. Let me explain why. Not from a book or some young psychologist's theory, from real life, from the long road I've walked. For a long time, I chased friendships, wanted to belong, wanted to keep up with old buddies, say yes to every gathering, and feel like I wasn't alone. But over time, most of those people faded. Some died. Some moved away. Some changed into folks I didn't recognize anymore. And I started noticing something. Every time I tried to hold on too tight to those connections, I felt more drained than uplifted. Conversations that used to spark joy now felt forced. I'd leave a coffee chat feeling more tired than refreshed. And one day it hit me. I was keeping up friendships out of habit, not because I actually needed them. The first reason you don't need friends after 70 is because you finally get to stop performing. All your life you've been performing, at work, at home, even with friends. Putting on a smile, nodding politely, laughing when you didn't want to, agreeing just to keep the peace. But at 70, you earn the right to stop doing that. You're allowed to say, "No thank you, I'd rather stay home with my book and cup of tea," and not feel guilty about it. You don't owe anyone a performance anymore. That's a kind of freedom you can't understand when you're younger. Second, your peace becomes sacred. When you're young, you confuse excitement for happiness. You want friends to fill the quiet. You want parties, get-togethers, constant chatter. But when you get older, you start to treasure quiet mornings, birds outside your window, your own thoughts, the peace of not having to explain yourself to anyone. Friends can be wonderful, but they also bring drama, expectations, and noise. At 70, you don't have time for that. You've seen enough conflict. You've lived through enough storms. Now you want still waters. And still waters don't need a crowd to be beautiful. The third reason is simple. Energy is a limited currency. When I was younger, I could spend all day socializing and still come home full of energy. These days, I have to choose carefully. If I spend the afternoon with someone who drains me, it takes me 2 days to recover. Not everyone talks about that, but it's true. Your body changes. Your spirit becomes more sensitive. Every interaction either gives you life or takes it. And when you finally realize that, you start choosing solitude over small talk. That's not loneliness. That's wisdom. That's survival. Now here's the fourth reason. You finally know who you are. In your 20s and 30s, you need friends to reflect back at you, to tell you who you are, to make you feel real. But after 70, you don't need that mirror anymore. You know who you are. You've lived through enough heartache and joy to be fully formed. You don't need someone else's opinion to validate your choices. You've made your peace with your past. That's not something you talk about at lunch with casual friends. That's something you carry quietly inside, and it's stronger than any friendship. Fifth, the fewer attachments you have, the lighter you feel. That one's hard to say, but I've buried friends. I've watched people I love fade into dementia. I've seen friendships that lasted decades crumble over politics or grudges, and every time, it hurts. Every time you carry a little more weight. When you start to let go of those expectations, when you stop needing people to stick around forever, you become lighter. You walk through life with less baggage. You can still love people. You can still care, but you don't have to cling. And that's a gift age gives you. The freedom to love without holding too tight. Now here's the sixth reason, and this one is the most important. After 70, your most important relationship is with yourself. Not your spouse, not your children, not your old golf buddies or your book club. It's with the person you see in the mirror every morning. That person has been with you through every chapter. That person deserves your attention, your forgiveness, your compassion. When you stop chasing friendship for the sake of not being alone, you start building a deeper connection with yourself. You start asking what you want, what makes you happy, what brings you peace. That's the kind of companionship no one else can give you, and it's the only one that will last until the end. Now, I know what some folks will say, but I love my friends, they keep me going. And that's fine. I'm not telling anyone to cut ties or sit in a dark room for the rest of their days. If you have friends who lift you up, who meet you where you are, who don't expect you to pretend or perform, hold on to them. But be honest, truly honest. Ask yourself if those friendships feed your soul or just fill your time. Ask if you'd still keep seeing them if you weren't afraid of being alone. Sometimes we confuse companionship with comfort. Sometimes we fear the silence because we don't know what we'll hear in it. But I'm here to tell you, silence isn't your enemy. It's where the truth lives. I used to feel guilty for saying no to invitations. I used to think I had to maintain connections or I'd be forgotten. But I've learned that being forgotten by others is not the worst thing. Forgetting yourself is. And when you keep putting everyone else's needs before your own, you disappear piece by piece. At 70, there's no more time for that. Every day matters. Every choice should bring peace, not pressure. You've earned that right. Now let me be clear, I'm not bitter. I don't hate people. I've loved deeply. I've had friendships that changed me. I've laughed until I cried around campfires and kitchen tables. But I've also outgrown things. And just like we outgrow clothes, we outgrow friendships. It's natural. It's not a failure. It's a sign that you're evolving, that you're listening to your spirit instead of social pressure. These days, I take walks by myself. I read books that stir something in me. I sit in silence and listen to the wind. I talk to my late wife sometimes, not out loud, just in my heart. And you know what? I'm not lonely. I'm full of memories, full of gratitude, full of the kind of peace that only comes when you stop chasing and start settling into your own skin. So you don't need friends after 70. What you need is space to breathe, time to think, the freedom to live without apology, and the strength to trust that you are enough, just as you are. That doesn't mean you shut the world out. It means you finally understand you don't have to let the world in if it doesn't feel right. That kind of independence isn't cold. It's warm. It's real. It's earned. And if one day someone shows up at your door, someone who doesn't need anything from you, someone who just wants to sit beside you and share the silence, well, that's a blessing, but it's not a requirement. You're not missing anything by being alone. You're simply making space for what truly matters. And at 70 and beyond, that might be the wisest thing you'll ever do. Do you find yourself craving solitude more as you grow older? Now let's clear some common questions. How can we embrace the idea that we are not less than simply because our social circle has shrunk? Ah, my dear friend, come sit beside me for a moment. Let me tell you something from the heart, something forged in the long, quiet hours of the night and the golden hush of countless dawns. You see, there was a time when I too measured my worth by the size of my circle, by the number of voices calling my name, by how often my phone buzzed or the seats filled at my table. I thought that to be surrounded constantly, to be the life of every gathering, was a sign of vitality, of importance, of being truly alive. But life has a way of revealing its truths, not in thunderclaps, but in whispers. And one of the deepest truths I have come to know is that we are never less than simply because our social circle has grown smaller. There comes a point when the noise dims. Friends drift away, some naturally with time, others with circumstance, and some through heartbreak that leaves a bruise even the years cannot fully fade. I have lost friends to distance, to death, to misunderstandings, and to the quiet, unexplainable unraveling that life sometimes brings. In my younger years, I saw these losses as failures. I blamed myself. I thought I had become less interesting, less valuable, less lovable. But as time passed and I stood with fewer people at my side, I realized that I had not diminished. Rather, I had distilled. What a strange and beautiful word that is. Distilled, like fine whiskey or sacred wisdom. What remains after the heat and pressure of life burns away the unnecessary. That is not less. That is more. More authentic, more potent, more true. And so it is with us. Our value, our wholeness, our beauty, they are not measured by quantity. They are measured by depth, by sincerity, by the love and peace we carry quietly in our hearts. There was a season in my life when I could name 30 or 40 people I would call friends. Parties and gatherings filled my calendar. But now I could count my dearest ones on one hand, maybe two if I stretch. And I do not mourn this. I cherish it, because each of those remaining souls knows me in my truest form. They have seen me cry. They have heard the trembling in my voice when I could not pretend to be strong. They have stayed when I had nothing to offer but my flawed, tired, hopeful self. Let me tell you a story. When I turned 60, there was no grand party, no crowded room singing in unison, just two dear friends and a quiet meal. One of them held my hand as we laughed over old stories. The other brought a small photo from a time we both barely remembered. That night I felt more celebrated, more held than at any grand affair I had ever attended. Because it was not the number of people around me that gave the moment its weight. It was the authenticity of the connection, the honesty, the love that had endured time and change and imperfection. I have learned that solitude is not the same as loneliness, that silence is not a punishment, that emptiness can be a space waiting to be filled with something more meaningful than noise. When our circles shrink, it can feel like a loss. And yes, sometimes it is. But it can also be a transformation, a refining, a calling inward to learn who we really are when we are not being reflected through the eyes of dozens of others. To embrace this idea fully, we must first let go of the belief that we are defined by our social capital. The world tries to tell us otherwise. Social media thrives on followers and likes and lists of who knows who. But that world is smoke. It is shadows on a wall. The real light is in presence, in showing up for one another in quiet ways, in knowing someone's laugh by heart, in sitting beside someone in silence and feeling no need to fill it. You are not less because your phone does not ring constantly. You are not less because your weekends are quiet. You are not less because you do not fit the mold of a social butterfly fluttering from one connection to another. You are exactly as you should be. And perhaps now in the stillness, you are able to hear the voice within you more clearly. That voice that has been waiting to tell you that your value is eternal, unshakable, independent of the crowd. I know it can be hard. The ache of disconnection is real. We are made for relationship after all. But we are not made for constant performance. We are not made to stretch ourselves thin just to maintain appearances. We are made to love deeply, to give freely, to be seen, and to see others in their honest, vulnerable humanity. And that kind of connection does not require a large circle, just an open heart and a few kindred spirits. You are not less than. You are becoming more yourself. And those who remain in your life now, those who truly see you, they are the ones who matter most. Nourish those connections. Let go of the rest without bitterness, without regret. I have found peace in writing letters I never send, in walking alone and listening to the wind, in remembering those I have lost with gratitude instead of longing. These practices ground me. They remind me that I am still whole. And if ever you feel the weight of aloneness pressing down, reach out, not to a dozen, but to one. Share a cup of tea, sit under a tree and speak your thoughts aloud. You will be surprised how often the universe answers, how often someone quietly shows up just when you need them. Life is not about how many hands we shake. It is about the few we hold on to, even when the world tries to pull us apart. So walk with your head high, speak your truth gently, and when you find yourself in a room with only your own reflection, smile, because you are not less. You are just more distilled. And that, my friend, is a treasure few ever learn to hold with grace. Tell me, what season are you in now? In what ways does living independently in thought and time lead to a richer experience of life after 70? Now that is a question worth sitting with for a while. In what ways does living independently in thought and time lead to a richer experience of life after 70? Come closer and let me answer with the honesty of years lived and lessons learned, not from books, but from the gentle weight of each sunrise and the quiet grace of each sunset. Let me speak not as a teacher, but as a companion on this road, a little further ahead, waving back with a smile that says, yes, The view from here is different, and it is beautiful. When I was younger, the rhythm of life was dictated by clocks and calendars, by deadlines and demands, by the expectations of others. I rushed from task to task, shaped by the noise of the world around me. My thoughts were often borrowed, echoes of louder voices that I mistook for wisdom. My time was never truly mine, but as the years added up and the pace of life slowed, I discovered something extraordinary. Independence of thought and time is not a retreat from life. It is a deeper immersion into its essence. Living independently in thought means allowing your mind to be your own. After 70, I found a kind of clarity that had eluded me in earlier decades. It is as if the fog of people-pleasing, of needing to prove something, finally lifted. I no longer needed to echo the popular opinion or bend my thinking to match someone else's comfort. I began to think with my own voice, not always loudly, but truthfully. I began to ask myself what I truly believed, what I valued, and I listened to the answers without judgment. That alone has brought a richness to my days I could never have imagined in my youth. There is a special kind of joy in waking up and knowing that the day belongs to you. Not just the hours, but the thoughts that fill them. I sit with my coffee, sometimes for an hour, just letting my mind wander where it wishes to go. There is no urgency, no need to rush toward productivity. And in that slowness, in that stillness, insights rise up like birds taking flight. I see patterns in my life I had missed. I feel gratitude more keenly. I laugh more easily, especially at myself. And when I read or write or think, it is not to impress, not to win approval, but simply to engage with the beauty of thought itself. Living independently in time is just as vital. After 70, I have become the keeper of my own hours. There is no boss waiting on a report, no children tugging on my shirt. The clock is no longer my master, and in that freedom, I have discovered a rhythm that suits my soul. I eat when I am hungry. I sleep when I am tired. I walk when the air feels right, and I sit in silence when that is what my spirit craves. Some would call it indulgence. I call it wisdom, because time, once governed by obligation, has become sacred. I remember once in my 50s sitting in traffic for 2 hours after a long day. My body was aching. My mind was racing. I thought to myself, this cannot be the best life has to offer. And it was not. Now I walk to the library at my own pace. I stop to admire the trees. I watch the birds without checking my watch. And somehow those small moments fill me with more meaning than any busy day ever did. Time has become not something I spend, but something I savor. Another gift of this independence is the ability to listen more deeply. When you are not rushing, when your thoughts are not entangled in the noise of others, you can truly listen to people, to the wind, to your own inner voice. I had a conversation with a young man recently. He asked me how I stay so content. I told him that after 70, I stopped filling every silence with noise. I stopped trying to be everywhere at once. I began to live in each moment fully. He looked at me like I had said something profound, but to me it was just the plain truth. The richness of life now comes not from excitement, but from depth. A single afternoon spent watching the sunlight through the trees. A long phone call with an old friend. The smell of bread baking in the oven. These are not small things. These are the treasures I used to miss while chasing something bigger. Living independently in thought and time allows me to recognize that these small, honest joys are what life is made of. And do not think this independence makes one lonely. It actually makes connection more profound. Because I am no longer looking to others to complete me, I bring my whole self to the table. I no longer need constant company. But when I do spend time with someone, it is rich, unrushed, meaningful. I speak from my own mind, not trying to say what I think they want to hear. That makes for better conversations, better friendships, better love. I have made peace with solitude. In fact, I have fallen in love with it. I take long walks alone, not to escape anyone, but to be fully present with myself. And in that space, I find inspiration. I find memories long forgotten. I find forgiveness for things I once carried like stones. I even find dreams, still alive and waiting, like seeds buried in the soil, finally given the time. and quiet to grow. So yes, living independently in thought and time after 70 is not just a way of living. It is a way of truly experiencing life. It is stepping out of the noise and into the richness of your own being. It is claiming the right to move at your own pace and think your own thoughts and live your own story. And in doing so, you realize that life was never meant to be measured by speed or applause. It was always meant to be felt, deeply, honestly, fully. Now, as I sit here and speak with you, I can say this with the certainty that only time can grant. My richest years have not been those with the most activity, the most money, or the most people around me. They have been these recent ones, where I live each day not according to the world's demands, but according to my heart's quiet wisdom. That, my friend, is freedom. That is joy. That is life truly lived. Tell me, have you begun to listen to your own time yet? Can a life with fewer social ties actually bring us closer to our truest selves in our final chapters? Now that is a question that stirs something deep in me. Can a life with fewer social ties actually bring us closer to our truest selves in our final chapters? Let me speak plainly and honestly, not as a man who read the answer in a book, but as one who lived his way into it. You see, I have walked many seasons through the bustling energy of youth, the responsibilities of middle life, and now into the quiet, golden stretch of my final years. And I can tell you, with the weight and wonder of experience in my bones, that yes, a life with fewer social ties can absolutely bring us nearer to who we really are. Not in a sorrowful or lonely way, but in a clear, grounded, and profoundly freeing way. When I was young, I surrounded myself with people. I thought that was the measure of a meaningful life. The more friends, the better. The more gatherings, the more alive I felt. I chased laughter and voices, filled my calendar with coffee dates, parties, work meetings, and social obligations. It was a life full of noise and motion, and while there was joy in it, I now see how easy it was to lose myself in that crowd. I was always performing, always adjusting, always measuring my value by the reflection in other people's eyes. I did not even realize how far I had drifted from my own true self until much later, when the tide began to go out. As the years passed, people began to fade from my life. Some moved away. Some grew distant, drawn into their own circles of family and change. Some I outgrew, and some outgrew me. A few left this world altogether, taking with them pieces of shared memory that can never be replaced. At first, I mourned the shrinking of my circle. I wondered if I had failed in some invisible way. Was I not kind enough? Not interesting enough? Why were the chairs around my table fewer each year? But then something unexpected happened. In the quiet left behind, I began to hear something I had not noticed in decades. My own voice. And let me tell you, that voice was not shouting or demanding attention. It was gentle, steady, familiar. Like the voice of an old friend who had been waiting patiently in the next room. With fewer people around, I was no longer bending myself to fit their shapes. I was no longer trying to be understood by everyone. I stopped worrying about being liked by all and started wondering if I liked myself. That is a question I had not truly asked before. And in that asking, I began to know who I really was. There is a clarity that comes when you are no longer stretched thin across too many conversations. You begin to see the patterns of your thoughts, the rhythm of your heart, the quiet desires that once got drowned out in the noise of constant connection. You realize what truly matters to you, not because someone else told you it should, but because it lights something in your chest when you think of it. For me, it was writing. For years, I wrote only what others wanted to read. But now I write what I feel, what I need, what speaks to the soul of who I am. And it feels like breathing after holding my breath for too long. With fewer social ties, I've also found myself more present. When I spend time with someone now, I am fully there. Not distracted, not scanning the room for someone else. It is just me and them, eye to eye, heart to heart. That kind of presence used to be rare for me. Now it is the only way I want to live. And when I am alone, which is often, I do not feel the hunger for company I once did. I feel rooted. I feel still. I feel connected to something deeper than small talk or passing chatter. You see, our truest selves are not hidden in crowds. They do not bloom under bright lights and busy schedules. They live in the quiet spaces, The still mornings, the long walks, the pages of old journals, the memory of a single touch, the sound of your breath as you sit with your own thoughts and finally stop running. I have learned to welcome those spaces, to hold them gently, to see them not as emptiness, but as sacred ground. Now, I am not saying we should turn our backs on all connection. We are human, we need love, we need to be known and to know others, but we do not need to be surrounded constantly to feel whole. In fact, sometimes the constant presence of others can blur the edges of who we really are. In solitude, those edges come into focus. We see what brings us peace, what stirs our spirit, what we fear and what we crave. We meet ourselves fully. And that meeting, if we are brave enough to stay with it, is the most intimate relationship we will ever have. I have spent entire days now in silence, not because I am sad or tired, but because I am content. I watch the clouds roll over the hills. I listen to the rain tapping on my roof like a forgotten melody. I write letters I may never send. I read books I missed in my younger years. I cook slowly, I speak softly. And in all of this, I feel more alive than I ever did in the crowded rooms of my youth. Not more excited, but more alive. There is a difference. A life with fewer social ties teaches you to befriend yourself. And when you are your own friend, your own steady companion, there is a peace that no crowd can provide. You stop fearing loneliness because you know how to be alone without being lost. You stop chasing approval because you have learned to offer it to yourself. And in your final chapters, when time stretches thin and the world grows quiet, that self-knowing is a light that never flickers. So yes, my friend, a life with fewer social ties can bring us closer to our truest selves. Not by stripping us of love, but by revealing where the deepest love lives, within us, around us, in the spaces we once overlooked, in the quiet that teaches us to listen, in the stillness that shows us we have always been enough. Now tell me, when was the last time you sat in silence and heard your own soul speak? If you liked today's discussion, don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to stay updated with every video we release. And yes, don't forget to share your experiences and thoughts in the comments. Every comment is special to us. Your feedback helps us improve further. We'll continue to meet you in every new video on this channel. So until next time, take care.